A journey into fractions. The path to common denominators. Hello, English language learners. Today we're going to dive into a fascinating aspect of numbers: fractions. Specifically, we'll focus on how to compare fractions with different denominators. One of the key steps in this process is finding a common denominator. So let's embark on this mathematical journey together. Before we talk about common denominators, let's remind ourselves of what a fraction is. A fraction is a way of representing a part of a whole or a quantity. It consists of a numerator, the top part, which represents the portion we're considering, and a denominator, the bottom part, which shows how many equal parts the whole is divided into. For example, if we have a fraction 3/4, this means we are considering 3 parts out of a whole divided into 4 equal parts. The term common denominator might sound a bit complicated, but don't worry. A common denominator is simply a number that is a multiple of all the denominators of the fractions we are comparing. This means that it's a number into which all the denominators can divide evenly. Finding a common denominator is important because it allows us to compare and manipulate fractions more easily. So how do we find a common denominator? Let's consider two fractions, 1/2 and 3/4. 1. List the multiples of each denominator. For 2, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. For 4, we have 4, 8, 12, etc. 2. Identify the smallest number that appears in both lists. In our example, that number is 4. So, 4 is the common denominator for the fractions 1/2 and 3/4. Now that we've found our common denominator, what do we do with it? We rewrite each of our original fractions as an equivalent fraction with our common denominator. Here's how you do it. 1. Divide the common denominator by the original denominator to find the factor. For 1/2, we would divide 4, our common denominator, by 2, our original denominator, to get 2. 2. Multiply both the numerator and denominator of the original fraction by the factor. In our example, we would multiply the numerator and denominator of 1/2 by 2 to get 2/4. So, the fraction 1/2 can be expressed as 2/4, which now shares a common denominator with the fraction 3/4. Thank you for joining me on this mathematical journey. I hope that you now understand the concept of a common denominator and why it's such a useful tool when comparing fractions with different denominators. Don't worry if you don't get it right away, practice is the key. Keep practicing, and I promise, it'll become second nature. Until next time, happy learning!